Hello, everybody. Hi, how is it going? Skugsiatic, Skugtash, Ani Napchigik, Jennifer Varenchik. Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Varenchik, and I'm from the Tonoatam Nation. Welcome to another wonderful episode of Sissy, Unci, Aunties. Today, we are celebrating healing in truth and resilience. And we have a great lineup for you today. I would like to start by bringing on our co-host, Avril Cordova, who, once she gets on here, I'm very excited to tell you, where are you coming from, Avril?
Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening or good day to wherever you are streaming in. I am coming to you live from the Kingdom of Hawaii, and I'm super excited to be here. It is September 25th, and just thankful that I'm able still to do Sissy's, Uncis, and Aunties in the home of my bestie, Jennifer Varenchik. Boo, boo, boo.
That's right. I thought you were going to say, or I was imagining coming live from Jennifer's kitchen.
Oh, well, I could do that too. Coming live from Jennifer's kitchen.
We had to separate due to sound issues, but I'm where I normally am, which is my office here, and April is in our kitchen. So we are in the same home, just steps away from each other.
Yes, it's been such a long time that I've been planning to be here. And that actually raises our first question. But I've been able to come and visit Jen. I've been planning it since she's moved here. It's been always my dream and request, and it will be still to come back and stay for a longer period of time. I've only been here for a couple of days. However, in the next session, when I come back, I'll be here for a couple of months.
That's right. So before we start, jumping into our show, those of you that watch us know we always do a prayer and a land acknowledgement before we get started. So I'm going to be doing our prayer today, and I have a small shell and some sage, which I realized I left in the kitchen, but I have extra over here. So I'm going to light the sage, and I'm going to make sure it's really lit. Let me give you guys some smudge there. You got it. All right, and then everybody, let's just take a nice big deep shoulders drop, and let's move into a moment here. Creator, thank you so much for bringing us all together here, whether in person or live streaming or in the replay. We're so grateful and thankful for all the eyes and the people that we have with us today. All those are listening. I ask that you bless this live stream and bless our show, our guests, all the people that are commenting. I also ask for special prayers for uplifting of those that are going through any type of multi-generational trauma, especially dealing with the boarding schools, and just healing in general for Indigenous people, all people that are going through something right now. We uplift them and we ask for blessings, and we're just grateful to our ancestors. And I am just very, very happy. My heart is full with today doing this show here with my bestie. So thank you. All right. So next we have, and that will be April. So I'm going to pass it over to April, and she's going to do our land acknowledgement.
Thank you so much, Jen. I just want to shout out first Indian country. And if you'd like to let us know in the comments, drop it in the comments where you're checking in from. As I stated, have come to Hawaii and am zooming in or streaming in from the Kingdom of Hawaii, particularly the Oahu Islands. And I'm thankful to be here. As a visitor, I just want to recognize that we are on, a different land than what I would normally be checking in from. But I'm always very much a individual who likes to recognize the community. And should you want to know or find out what lands you're a guest on, or what tribal nation reps the area that you're in, you can always go to land.ca to find out what land you're on. So that concludes the land acknowledgement, that we're making sure that we recognize um, who were here before me as a visitor or any of us. Thank you. The end. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer.
Wonderful. Okay, so now we're going to move into our check-in point, which is given that April is on vacation and that she's here, everybody vacations differently. So what kind of vacationer are you? Meaning, I'll just start since I what kind of vacationer are you? I am the kind who likes to just relax, sleep in, be very leisure, maybe do one or two excursions or planned activities. I do not like to get up early in the morning to go on a tour or visit a museum or any of those things. I don't want to do that. I already know I don't want to do it. I will do it. I will, if given if it's like, I'm part of a group or with my family, but that's not, I'm going on vacation to relax and unplug and get away. I don't want to have a vacation from my vacation. And so when Glenn and I started vacationing together, that was like, I never even considered that. I thought my whole family's the same way. We will just lounge by the pool or read a book by the beach. We're not racing off to go do any type of excursion. So I thought that everybody was like that. And then when I started vacationing with Glenn, he's like, we got to go here. We're going here. We're doing this. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. And all these plans, all these excursions were planned like without any input from me. And it was not a good thing because I am not an early morning riser. And then if you're waking me up early on vacation, no. So we do, we compromise, but it was like a whole new world for me to see that people do these type of activities on vacation. So that's the kind of vacationer I am. What about you, Avril?
Same, same, same. Being here in Hawaii, this is our second week. So our first week was spent in Maui. We had a whole week in Maui where we got to visit different beaches, and we're traveling as a family. So I also have my mother-in-law who's 79 years old, and she's not, she has a walker, and she's not going to be in every single day in her bikini on the beach. So we are the second day, it was barely the second day. We were just lounging in the bed. And I felt so bad. I felt so bad that I was just lounging in the bed in Hawaii. But then I also asked one of my besties through text. I was like, I just feel so bad. And they're like, don't feel bad. That's what vacationing is. You need to relax, rest, and rejuvenate yourself. So after hearing that, I was like, I don't feel bad. And our family too, yes, we do like to, take time, but also we have children that turned 7 and turned 10. So they always want to do something. So my daughter and my son-in-law are up early just because they work and they have to take the kids to school. So they're normally up early. And they're on the go all the time. But where I'm at this point, I'm like, I just want to spend time with my bestie. You guys go to the beaches, I'll just be here. And luckily, the second week here in Oahu, Honolulu area, I have the opportunity to have my bestie here and stay and hang out and, do all that fun stuff. So the type of vacationer I am, I don't like a rigid schedule either because I'm not an early morning riser, but we're more of lounge. And if we do a tour, it's like after 10 a.m. That's it, the end. Jen?
All right. Yes. So, yes, it's back to me. And so now we know what kind of vacationers we are. Bird of a feather. I was just thinking, like, if there was a place that I would want to go, like, I know for sure I want to see the pyramids in my lifetime when it's safe to travel. And for that, I would get up early. All the like, if it's a choice, then I will gladly choose to stay in. However, okay, so we're going to move on now. April, you're going to introduce.
Yes. So we're so excited to welcome our special guest, Auntie Joanie, to Sissy's, Uncis, and Aunties. Dr. Joanie is from the Pueblo of Cochiti. She is an educator, um, an activist, advocate. She does strategic work, and it centers on uplifting Native American communities and advancing Native early childhood. She holds a Doctor of Education in Education Leadership from the University of Washington. Her dissertation examined the legacies of the federal Indian boarding school era and its intergenerational impacts, and how Native women led healing centered change in their communities. Dr. Joanie serves as the Assistant Secretary for Native American Early Education and Care at the New Mexico Early Childhood Education and Career and Care Department, where she advances government to government collaborations and culturally grounded early childhood initiatives across the state. She is a proud member of the Pueblo de Cochiti and an Albuquerque resident. She is also the founder of Corn Pollen Consultant, established in 2017. She's a Native American women owned small business that champions Indigenous rights, advances public policy, and supports education and community well being. Um, she contributes to national policy conversations on federal Indian law, the intergenerational impacts of boarding schools, and Indigenous healing, helping raise awareness and inform approaches that acknowledge historical injustices while supporting community defined solutions. We are so excited to have her here. She is my sister from the Return to Heart Foundation, and I'm so honored and we are so blessed to have her here. She's a busy woman, so I'd like to bring her on and have her introduce herself as well. And here she is.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Goetzi hopa, kuchinak sijan, hatawits asa shutsanahanusuta, kukit asi osuta. Again, I'm Dr. Joanie Suina. I am from the Pueblo of Cochiti and just so honored to be with you all this evening. The sun is just about to go down here in New Mexico, where I'm coming to you from Chiwa territory in Albuquerque.
Nice. Thank you so much for being here. So, um, we wanted to ask you the question as well. What kind of vacationer are you?
Well, as you all were answering this question, I was thinking to myself, I'm a mom of four teenagers, and it is really hard to stay on schedule when you're trying to travel, especially if you're taking a road trip. So, what I have found works best is just kind of going with the flow, not really having a schedule per se, kind of guiding the day with meal times. Okay, we're going to leave around, the morning and grab breakfast, and then we'll move into our first stop, which will be around lunchtime. So we do it organically, I would say. We don't really follow a schedule unless we have like a event or a game or something that we want to see. Then we're definitely going to be pushing the brakes and making sure we're on time and on schedule.
Nice, nice. Well, we are very happy that you're here. We're very honored that you're here. We know you're a busy woman. And the show today is called Healing in Truth and Resilience. And we have a couple of questions that we want to ask, and no big pressure. It's just a conversation. So our first question would be, can you share a little bit about your journey as a Pueblo woman and how your community roots guide the work that you do today?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for that question. As you know, I come from the Pueblo of Cochiti, and being Pueblo is not just an identity, it's really a way of life. It's about our values, it's how I speak, how I pray, how I raise my children, how I show up in community. And it is about having respect for the land, it's reciprocity, it's honoring our children and elders, and it's always keeping that at the forefront of all of my decision making. In my work today, I carry this forward through a lot of prayer, to be quite honest. The healing work that I've been a part of at the national level to bring awareness around federal Indian policy and how that era of time related to when our children were taken away from us as young as 3 years old. And now, looking forward at the very office that I oversee for the state of New Mexico, the Native American Early Education and Care Office, and how it is built upon culturally responsive curricula grounded in linguistic honoring of our children's heritage and where they come from, language immersion programs, and historically accurate also teachings as well. It just means so much to me to be able to not only walk the walk, but talk the talk. And I would also say that my journey as a Pueblo woman has really been guided by those teachings that have been instilled in me by my own family, by my mother. I come from a matrilineal community, and so carrying our clan forward in a good way and always speaking with humility and showing up in that way is also something that's very important to me. And now, as a mom, like I mentioned, I'm a mom of four. I have four teenagers, 17, nearly 15, 15, and 13. My twins will turn 15 next week. So I would say just that, my work and the way I practice who I am as a Pueblo woman is all embedded in those teachings that every choice should really strengthen family, community, and our languages and way of life.
Nice.
Nice.
Thank you.
Great answer. Great
Now,
answer.
now I'm feeling guilty about because you said every choice, and I'm like, when I'm choosing to like lounge in bed or whatever when I'm on vacation, kind of like what you said, April, feeling guilty. So, okay, so I'm gonna ask our second question, which is, what does healing in truth and resilience mean to you, both personally and professionally?
This is a really tough question, but I think that in terms of healing, resilience, and how what I was speaking to earlier about our values, what does that mean to me personally and professionally? Well, I believe that it comes from a framing of having the courage to name what has happened, whether it's a personal,
Mhm.
individual experience or whether it's a familial experience, a community experience. And in the instance of, what so much of my work and my research has focused on, naming those harms, those injustices, um, the erasures that have happened in regards to how our land has been stolen from us, how our children, our babies were also taken from us. And the way that federal Indian law and policy has continued to set precedent is also something that I feel, very tied to in terms of when we speak about land, body, and spirit, they're all connected, one and the same. And in order to heal our past, present, and future, those are things that we have to keep in mind. And so, personally, it's meant also unpacking my own family's experiences with boarding schools and knowing that some of my own relatives have been taken to places like Carlisle Indian Industrial School in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, which is where I'll be traveling to tomorrow, actually.
Mm.
And my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, also attended Albuquerque and Santa Fe Indian schools. They didn't finish school per se. And then my mother is also a product of our Pueblo Day School. And, just looking at the deeper effects of intergenerational trauma that we can connect back to how these institutions try to chip away at our individual identity, our culture, our languages, and our ways of life, and how today we're in this race with time to save our languages, to teach our babies our, cultures and our traditions, to follow our traditional calendars, show up in community. And there's so much pressure. And we kind of just jokingly also said like, I feel guilty for, not having something planned or making each choice really count forward. But I think that in everything that we're doing, whether we're taking a moment to ourselves to reground, we're constantly trying to tap into that place within our blood memory that needs repair, that needs healing. And so for me, this work has really meant creating that in spaces where we can honor truth and where resilience is not just about that thriving piece, but really what does it look like when our cultures and our communities and our voices are centered when we're called to the table. So again, I'm just so grateful to be here to be called to your table tonight.
Thank you so much. It's crazy how, Indian country is so big yet so small. There's a couple of things that you mentioned, one that you're going to Carlisle. And I heard the podcast that you did with Dr. Amanda, and we actually had her on our show as well. So it's crazy. She has a whole list of, all a lot of Pueblo students that are youth or relatives that were at Carlisle that I was lucky enough to have her. She sent to. If you like it, she'll send it to you. With all those names. And before the show, I had a conversation and we had small talk, and we were talking about. I was telling you that both my mom and dad went to boarding school. My dad went to Santa Fe Indian School, which is still running today, and that. And then my mom as well went to boarding school. But also healing from that. I was born and raised in Downey, California, and considered an urban Indian, but my mom and dad shared different things with us, and some of their experiences from boarding school. But one of the things that I learned actually from my old um, job was that a lot of people don't know what intergenerational trauma is, or, what that means. So could you explain that would you like to explain it? I can explain it, but I know that you have a lot of, you've worked in like boarding school era things and different capacities. So it just hit me when I learned about it. Well, that's why my mom does this, or that's why my mom didn't teach us language, or all of those things. I've learned in different capacities.
Yeah, no, great question. Thank you. And also shout out to Dr. Amanda Jeremiah. I serve on the board for the Center for the Future of Native Peoples, where she's the executive director and is a part of that ongoing work as a board member, researcher, and also because of my experience in this field, I've been asked to come out to Carlisle and be a part of some of their activities on September 30th. So definitely holding them and our relatives that are buried there in the cemetery, and all the work and the archives and the amazing people that have really contributed to the dialogue, just sending blessings to them as well. But in terms of intergenerational trauma, so if we can imagine a lake, let's imagine a lake, and let's say it's cloudy out and there's a raindrop that comes down from the sky. That raindrop might be one generation in essence, right? And we can think about what things might happen to us on our journey of life. For some of us, we might experience hardship. For some of us, we might experience grief, abuse. The list can go on and on. When that raindrop hits that body of water and it creates those ripple effects, we can imagine that like rings on a tree as representation of generations. And so those rings or ripple effects would then carry forward the experiences that we have, whether, again, it is our experiences around relocation, according to federal Indian law, or it is around boarding schools, such as our subject tonight, and also considering that, some of these experiences intergenerationally, we have to keep in mind too that not everybody had a far right or negative experience, or maybe it was somewhere in the middle where they did gain, from attending boarding school and having, for example, what I've heard from some survivors is that they prefer not to be called survivor, and that they actually, gained so much from attending school. They made, friends. They learned vocations. It helped to advance them forward in their careers and whatnot. But going back to the definition, we could, view that imagery as that continued experience that is a reverberation of energy, of blood memory. We could label it as so many different things. And in particular, that is what I looked at within my dissertation, looking at the legacies of how these traumatic events, like federal Indian boarding schools, have created those ripple effects, knowing that they disrupted family systems where our children were taken, our languages and our people were stripped away and or our people were punished, and our ceremonies then became hidden. So we know that those wounds don't just disappear when those schools, have closed. And like you mentioned, Sis Averill, Santa Fe Indian School is really an amazing model of what it looks like when we reclaim our children through education and language, being under a tribally controlled framework. And when we see those generational silences and not addressing those struggles, we see that show up in our communities with how we parent, how we process and cope. It shows up in our health, it shows up in our relationships. And like I said, on the flip side of that, I've seen the opposite. I've seen the reclamation of language and culture, bringing our songs back, returning to the land, and showing that resilience is just as deeply embedded as that trauma. And within my studies as a doctoral student, I specifically wanted to look at Native women who were heeding that call to action, seeing these challenges in our communities where we might be seeing non-Native practitioners coming into our communities, doing the consultant works, being hired for, these gigs to plan and strategize when we know inherently and altruistically what our communities need. We know what kinds of supports that they need, and we've known it for time immemorial. And so I wanted to capture the beauty of what it means to be a Native woman and how during COVID we knew how to respond. We were behind our sewing machines, sewing masks. We were cooking food for our elders and, doing drop-offs. We were doing the shopping, the sanitizing, the homeschooling, all of the above, and making sure that our people were okay. And so, looking at the ways that COVID was also very devastating to us, it did also allow us to reconnect with the land and with our relationships in a completely, new way.
I love that you mentioned that because that's actually how this monthly live came to be. Well, it came to be in different ways. During COVID, I was hired by the Pacu Cultural Community Center, which is part of the Fernandino Tatavian Band of Mission Indians. It's their nonprofit. I was hired by them to help with a census event that they were going to have on April 1st. And closer to that event, COVID happened. And I was telling the director, one of our friends, me and Jen's friends, Eric Sanchez, I was telling him, we really need a healing of some type because our world is, things are happening in the world. So I talked to the tribal chair, Rudy Ortega Jr., and I was like, instead of it being a in-person event, can we have a live event? And from there,
Mhm.
we started doing monthly things. We did an online graduation. We did an online powwow. We brought community together through this type of platform, online platform. So I like that you say that. And you answered the question that we were going to ask next about, what you've seen and what you experienced. And I appreciate also you saying that some individuals, some relatives, don't want to be labeled as a survivor, because I've also heard individuals share that, they've gained from something. My mom and dad, they met from relocation. They've met from, different types of things. So, thank you for the answer. It really speaks volumes to me in my own personal life and my own healing journey. Um, so I appreciate that um,
Absolutely.
this
I could share a little
conversation.
bit more around that question too. I think that looking at the outcome of how, well, I guess going back to some of the findings and recommendations within my study, I specifically worked with Return to the Heart Foundation. Just also want to give a shout out to them, Gina Jackson and Sarah Eaglehart, for believing in me and my ideas, my work, and this concept of the call to action to philanthropy to fund us, to fund Native women, because we know what healing solutions are best for our communities. And at the time, this was back in 2023 when I finished up my dissertation, but I was looking at some of the more recent studies around Native philanthropy and how many dollars are actually going back into the community of the billions of dollars that flow throughout the philanthropic system just in the United States alone. Native American serving organizations, Native led organizations receive less than 0.5%.
Mhm.
And even an even smaller amount goes to women and girls. And so when we think about the larger impacts, again, going to that ripple effect of intergenerational trauma, many of us are survivors of so many things. And, we also have it in our lineage as well. Maybe our grandmothers or our aunties, our mothers, might be survivors as well. Maybe we've had somebody go missing in our family. And so, the effects of what that looks like is so tremendous as well. And as a result of my research, my hope was that shedding light on these stories of these women who were doing such incredible lifts to return traditional medicines back to their communities, revive songs, to implement contemporary ways of knowing with traditional modalities like healing through yoga, for example. It was just another one of the many ways that I think that we as Native women are so innovative. We're always going to get the job done, and
Mm.
we're always going to show up for our community. It makes me think of smoke signals, and Arlene is like, there were, 50 pieces of fried bread and there was like 100 people, and she just is like, woo, solution.
That's awesome. Yes. I just really love this time that we have to share with each other. It just it is very much touching to both my professional and personal life. So, Ta'a, thank you.
I wanted to ask a question, kind of off of this question. So, I used to work in urban, like downtown Los Angeles with families, Native families, and we would talk about boarding school, and we would talk about how grandmas and grandpas or great grandmas and grandpas went to boarding school. And sometimes I would get teenagers to be like, well, that's them. That's not me. And yet trying to explain intergenerational trauma and why we're facing a lot of issues, not just from boarding school, but other things that we've had. Like in Los Angeles, for instance, it was a big relocation center. And they deliberately, like in Los Angeles, there are different neighborhoods, like, Chinatown, historic Filipino town, like different areas where different cultures, Little Armenia, just different cultures tend to congregate. So when it came time for relocation for Native Americans in Los Angeles, they deliberately like placed families away from each other so we would assimilate. Um, which is where our program came in because we were out there trying to gather all the kids and bring them together so they could have that cultural connection. But my question really is to those, I think that all of these policies, not just boarding school, but relocation, all the different things that have happened within Indigenous folks here on Turtle Island, um, they all contribute to our intergenerational trauma. But what can we say to those teens, or should we even say anything to teens when they're like, that's them, that's like so long ago, that doesn't have anything to do with me today? If you could speak on that for a second.
I can absolutely speak on that. And my kids, if they were here in the room with me, they would probably be like, Mom can, give us one heck of a lecture. But I think the short answer really is that yes, absolutely. We should be having these discussions, at our kitchen table. And it might start with something as small as, hey, Mom, today we had this awesome, performance by this person that sang songs for us and shared a little bit more about their culture. And I think being creative and organic, we know our children best as parents and caretakers, and guiding those questions around, oh, that's really awesome, what did you think about that, how did it make you feel, does it ever make you want to does it make you homesick or want to be a part of ceremony, or would you ever want to go to, I don't know, whatever local events, happening, ceremonial or a powwow, for example. That's sort of how I lead into a deeper discussion around something heavier around trauma. But I always try to use our experience as a family and as a community as an example. And I'll take my community for example. The Pueblo of Cochiti is situated about 30 minutes south of Santa Fe. And up until recently, we were home to the seventh largest man-made dam in the world. And now globally, that's somebody else has that record, and not that it's a good record because we also think of it as the damn dam. But the Army Corps of Engineers came in the 1960s, and simultaneously, this development corporation that wanted to build a suburban oasis in between Santa Fe and Albuquerque also came forward and decided that Cochiti land would be the ultimate um, development spot. And so our Pueblo signed into a 99-year lease, which is something that was happening across the nation with other tribes. And so framing that in a way for my teenagers to understand, can you imagine the pressure that our elders were faced with? Should they sign away and agree to this, agree to leasing the land? What would the result of that look like? And ultimately, um, what it looked like was 17-inch standing pools of water that flooded our field lands and nearly ended subsistent ways of life, which then cut into intergenerational breaks around the Keres language being spoken and taught within the home. Simultaneously, the Office of Head Start came in and decided English only. And so at that time, parents made a conscious choice that they were not going to teach the language to children and family, and that English would be the way forward. And so now today, we've come such a long way. Back in the 90s, we had pilot programs. I was fortunate to be a part of one of those programs as a kid. And now, looking ahead almost 20 some years later, we are serving as a model that actually follows many of our Native Hawaiian counterparts and Maori relatives as well, looking at Punana Leo as one of the first models that we've implemented into our community as a language nest. And so, again, I would say the short answer is like using that community-based example as something that they can relate to, embedding it with stories, and asking them to dig into their feelings. And even though they might not respond and say, oh, I understand this and the concepts within it or the timeline, they're going to go back and think about it later. It's going to spark curiosity. That's what I found to work best with my four teenagers.
That sounds like a good plan. Sure.
A good plan and a good way to talk to teenagers.
Mhm.
But the other question that I have, and maybe going a little bit younger than teenagers, in your role with New Mexico's Early Childhood Education and Care Department, how do you bring culture and healing centered practices into early childhood spaces? We talked about teens, now a little bit earlier than that.
Yeah, so kind of bringing it full circle for me in my career, I actually started out in my community as a language and culture teacher, developing materials, and it's sort of where I gained an interest for artistry, graphic design, and whatnot, developing
Mm.
my own teaching manipulatives. And when I had my own children, I had my first child and had just graduated from the University of New Mexico and got my first what I called real job because it had benefits and I actually had leave and all that good stuff, that comes dental and 401k and all that. And so I was the Head Start director for three different Pueblo Head Starts here in New Mexico. So now being able to serve in this role, it's just, such a full circle moment for me. And having been a part of the system in the sense that I myself and my children received, services, whether it was from New Mexico Pre-K, um, Head Start, or one of our local Pueblo programs, like our Language Nest or our Montessori school. It just is such a honor for me to be able to lead this work as a former teacher, as a mother, and I hold that responsibility so near and dear to my heart. But working for the department means that I specifically support and oversee the collaboration in our government to government relationships with all the nations, pueblos, and tribes in New Mexico. And really also looking at how the idea of culture is not an add-on, but it's a foundation for who we are,
Mm.
what we do, and also honoring all of those programming that exist across the state. And I'm telling you, we have like such a beautiful portfolio of programming, like I mentioned, Head Start, pre-K, child care centers. And so, really, that means honoring those traditional knowledge systems in those respective curriculums at those centers. And it also ensures that our early childhood programs are places where our children feel seen, where they're rooted in who they are and honored in their identity, and that those healing centered practices also are not just numbers and outcomes, but really they're looking at wholeness, belonging, and connection, spirit. And so today I presented to the New Mexico Indian Affairs Committee a little bit more about an upcoming tour that we're embarking on. It's called Sacred Beginnings, a learning tour of Native American early education and care across New Mexico. And so we're looking forward to visiting each of the nation's pueblos and tribes in the state and their respective centers. And we realize, for example, like Navajo has many different chapters and centers, and we are just delighted to, start getting these dates on the calendar. We actually kicked off our first visit at New Mexico School for the Deaf, where they support children from 18 months old to 12th grade, and 22% of their population there in Santa Fe is Native American students.
Mm.
18% of their staff are Native American as well. So it was really great to
Nice.
kick off locally and get on the playground and sign with our kiddos, pull out the ASL that I've been itching to use again.
Nice. That sounds so awesome. I can't wait to see your tour happening. And I am so amazed by all the things that you've done and all the things that New Mexico is doing. There's um, a time when we didn't have that percentage in staff. And sometimes we see it in different areas. So that's really good to hear that there's Indian people leading the way and a teacher to student way. And they can better understand too, because sometimes individuals don't understand what children, Indian children, may be going through.
Definitely, absolutely.
I know that we're coming to we're coming to the end or near the end, not quite yet, but I wanted to just ask you who inspires you on your own healing journey? Like who or what inspires you on your own journey of healing?
Thank you so much for this question. And sisters, thank you for all the questions and just really the way that you've formatted the evening and for your show, for your heart work, really. I would have to say that my children are the ones that
Mm,
really bring so much light and vision to who I am. You know, they're the last things I'm thinking about, worrying about when I go to sleep at night, what we need to do for the next day. And they're what also get me up in the morning to make sure that, moving forward, all the things that we're doing and carrying out, whether it's for school, work, traditional, stuff at home in Cochiti, that, they're at the forefront of my work. And so they've really inspired me to become the best version of myself that I possibly can be. And as a mama, as a daughter, not only to my own mother, but a daughter of my community, I want to be able to show my peers and the younger generations, and anybody that really, is looking for support or a shoulder to lean in on, an ear to listen, that I'm that confident support who can, um, you know, hold your word and pray for you and believe
mm,
in you. And that's what my children do for me every single day without even having to say it. And it's in the little things I think that they push forward. Like my daughter the other day sent me this video on TikTok and it was like about being a Velcro kid attached to mom. But in the smallest ways, when we think that our children aren't paying attention or watching, or maybe that they don't really understand, what we're doing per se, it's in those moments that you get those like bits of like confirmation and energy, like
mm.
I'm doing a good job, raising these kiddos. So that's what makes my heart tick.
For sure. It's always a blessing to have like a lesson or something that you said or an action, like they do it, like then they either say it back to you or you overhear them, or I don't know. I just always smile whenever somebody or someone like my grandson maybe might do something and I'm like, oh, he was listening. He
I
was
love
paying
it.
attention. Yeah.
When we think they're not listening, they totally are, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oops.
Mhm.
And
Right.
I love too that you saying that your children, my grandchildren, will randomly say, Delilah does this a lot. She says, Grandma, like when I'm frustrated and I'm like, "Arr," she's all, Grandma. And I'm all like, what? And she's all, I love you, and she'll be in the
Oh,
back of the
I
seat. We'll
love
be
that.
driving. I love you, Grandma. Or she'll say it to her mom or her dad. And I love that they can express that without feeling, some type of way. My grandson does it not as much as my granddaughter does, but they do it to each other too. Brother, I love you, or
Mhm.
Delilah, I love you. I love that they can express that, and to get so much guidance from them. As you say about our children, they wake you up, and that's the last thing that you're thinking about when you go to sleep. It's planning for our next generations, just as others have done for us. And I always make sure that I let them know, I'm the sixth generation. My daughter is the seventh generation. And
Mhm.
we always talk about seven generations of how, our ancestors planned for the seventh generation, but there'll always be a seventh generation. I think like what has my daughter done? But she's a homeowner, she's a business owner. You know, she has children.
Amazing.
She was able to treat us to 2 weeks in Hawaii. You know, that's such
Wow.
so amazing. You know, so I appreciate that question and just reflecting on it for myself. You know, seeing that one day they can take on um those big lights of knowing who they are and where they come from, you know, and not having to think of the hurt that was. I mean, they'll always have to think of it, but not so much as, you know, thinking that it might happen again with this administration. I don't know, but like just knowing that they come from powerful people. I just want to say thank you for that. And you know, like you said, um you had mentioned about being able to pray for somebody if somebody comes. You know, it is National Suicide Awareness Month and Orange Shirt Month, what brings up a lot of things. You know, I just want to share with our audience that there are people that you can speak to if you are in a crisis. You know, there's the Strong Hearts Native Helpline, which is 844-762-8483. Texting is also available 24/7. You can send a text to receive support. They also have a website. These are just a couple of things that I want to put out to individuals that might be struggling with whatever. You know, Orange Shirt Day is a way to remember, but it also can bring up a lot of different things. Um, there's also, if you dial 988, you can speak directly with the trained crisis counselor. You know, send text to 988 to reconnect with the crisis counselor. You know, during COVID, we lost a lot of individuals. You know, from the disease itself, or you know, somebody self harming themselves, and at that time, I didn't go to. I'm not always one to go to a counselor, the Western way, but I had my friends and family be able to support me, and I'm always blessed to receive medicines when I feel like, am I ever going to get them again? I know where to go to harvest them, but I always receive them, you know, without it being asked for. So I'm thankful for that. But if you don't have somebody to talk to, there's always, you know, those numbers again. That's I just wanted to share online as we end. It is coming to the end, and I'm just really thankful again that you're here. Is there anything else that you'd like to share to our audience?
Yeah, thank you again for having me. It's been a beautiful evening and afternoon to be able to share this space with you. The one thing that I would love to leave you all with is that I am so honored to share that here in the state of New Mexico, through the leadership of Secretary Griginski, who is my boss and leads the work at New Mexico Early Child and Care Department, along with our governor, our awesome governor, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. She has signed
Okay,
our proclamation
I
and
think
Go ahead.
oh, she has signed our proclamation to
had
recognize
technical
September 30th as Day of Remembrance. Every child matters, every child remembered. And so I'll definitely pass that along to you, sis, if you could share it on your social media platforms. It's one way that at the state level of government, New Mexico is just a handful, less than, I want to say, like 5 states have recognized this as a national day, proclaiming it as Day of Remembrance. So I'll definitely share that. But the message I want to close with is you are the answer to your ancestors' prayers, your language, your laughter, those big auntie